everyone, it's Jeannie, and today I'm sharing a card using some Ink on 3 products. They just recently had a new release, and these two items are part of that new release. So I'm using the Leafy Forest stencil with the Altier inks to create a background. So I set out to create this card and I had an idea in mind, and it actually turned out to be two cards. And we'll go through why and how I get there through this video. So I am going in and ink blending with the Atelier inks. I'm doing this on Nina cardstock, so I don't know if you blend a lot, but for me on Nina cardstock, it's a little bit harder to get a good blend. These blend actually very well on Nina cardstock, which is surprising, but I did want to blend them together. I kind of wanted to keep them separate, so I have the little stripes. For my personal preference, I usually prefer to blend on Bristol Smooth, but I'm kind of running out of Bristol Smooth and I just haven't planned on going to a craft store or ordering, so I'm just working with what I have. So for the stencil, I am putting it down. I just use washi tape because I have a ton lying around the house. And I am using Nuvo Glimmer Paste mixed with a drop of the Goddess ink, Altier ink re-inker, along with the Bee Sting re-inker. And I am stenciling that on after mixing it into the glimmer paste. So this particular glimmer paste I think is actually discontinued, and I didn't realize that until after I created this card. I think that there are other alternatives, which is like the Glitz Glimmer from Gina K or something like that. But anything that is white that you can mix in works well. I also have texture paste that sometimes I will use and I will mix in color because it's white, and you can customize whatever color you want. So I had leftover glimmer paste, and I'm not going to put this back in the bottle because I added color to it. So I grabbed another piece of cardstock and covered as much as I could on the card, and that is why I ended up creating a second card. So for today's two cards, I decided that I'm going to stamp using blackout ink and fade out ink. So I'll show you the process of how I color both normally with a black outline image and with fade out coloring. The technique is pretty similar, but it does have a few differences because of the fade out ink. You have to account for the lines not showing the contrast of the images, and you have to color accordingly. I'm also using the new Ink Off stamp cleaner, which is pretty cool. What you do is you just wipe off the excess, stamp on the cleaner lightly, and then rub it off, and that's it. And it makes it so much easier. If you don't like sprays, this is a good alternative as well. This fox and bunny image is perfect for no line coloring beginners because it is large with large spaces and not that many shadows. So if you've ever wanted to try no line coloring, I recommend that this is one of the images that you test it out on first. For all my no line coloring images, I always will go in with a Copic black marker for really small details, for like their eyes and their nose here. For the coloring, I am going side by side, so you kind of see the differences between how I color these two images. And as you can see, for the first area, which is the foxtail and its mouth, there isn't that much shadow. The only shadow that's created is right behind the bunny's head. And because this area is so large, I go in with the lightest color to my darkest and then back out to my lightest to get the blend that I normally have when I have black outline images. So there's nothing different here. When we get to the bunny where there is a little bit of shadow, there is a difference on how I deal with the coloring. For the blackout images, I will go always in with my lightest and work my way out to the darkest and then back out to my lightest for a nice blend. For the no line coloring, I go in with my darkest color always because I am mapping out all the different areas where there's shadow. So like right behind the bunny's head where his ear is, right underneath his chin where he has the chin and the body, where his leg is and where his little bunny tail is. And this allows me to see the different areas where I will be working my way out to the lightest color. Because fade out is meant to work and absorb the color that you're putting on top of it. If I went in with my lightest color, I would lose all the areas that I'm gonna need for contrast, and I wouldn't it would just be a blob. I wouldn't be able to tell like where the contrast is needed. So by working my way from the darkest out, I am able to develop the same type of shadow that I do with the blackout ink. And with the blackout ink, of course, they have that black line that differentiates the chin from the rest of the body or the ear from the head. And so it's easier to work from the lightest out because you always have that safety net of the black line. But with the no line coloring, you don't have that safety net. And that's precisely why for the fox with the black outline, I'm going in with the lightest color to color his entire body and working my way out to the darkest color and going back to the lightest just to blend everything out. I already know where all the shadows will be because that's where all the lines are connected, right? So I found that looking at images and thinking about where the shadows will be is really helpful with no line coloring. So if you're starting out and you kind of want to see where you should put shadows, stamp out the black image and color it in, and you'll see where you put the shadows. And that's precisely where you should start with the no line coloring. And that's just my technique. You might have a technique that works for you. But like for the fox, there's different areas where you need to build that contrast. So I will go in with the darkest color just to mark it out. But the foxtail is such a large area that I can just work with that area and then move on to the body. So I tend to work with one area of a critter or a flower before I move on to the next with no line coloring, even though it's faster just to, color everything in and then go in with all the shadows. But for no line, I have to take a different approach to it so I don't lose that line. So for the tail and the body, that's how I created that contrast. The darker colors are right behind his booty and where his tail is. And any shadows on that body is right beneath where the bunny is hugging him. For the head, it's the same thing. I'm looking at the image that I colored on the left and I'm seeing where the shadows are. And I am basically mimicking exactly where all the shadows are with my darkest color. And I will go in with my lightest and color in the entire area of his head. I will say that you have to be careful with using your lightest color because it does pick up the darker colors that you're coloring over it. So sometimes I'll have to go in with the second darkest color just to give that dimension and the contrast that I want, and that's what I did there. So for these images, I don't believe there are coordinating die cuts, but they're so easy to color that it wasn't a big deal for me to fussy cut. So now I have two images and two background panels. For this first background panel, there's so much going on, there's so much color, so I decided that I'm going to pair this with the image that I stamped with the blackout ink because it's so bold. I also wanted to mat it on black cardstock, so I am trimming it off. The same with this second panel. I'll be adding it to yellow cardstock, and I'm going to do something a little different with this card panel. But I'm just trimming it down, and eventually I'll be cutting it into a diagonal piece anyway. For the first card, I am matting it on black cardstock, and I will be adding a sentiment on black cardstock as well. I'm going in with my anti-static powder tool and prepping the area. I'll be using the Sending Hugs sentiment, stamping it with juicy ink, and heat embossing it with Arctic White embossing powder. So with this sentiment, I really like it because it has two different fonts, so it kind of lets the hugs part pop out a little bit more. I will also go in with a craft pick because sometimes there are sentiments that are super teeny tiny and there are holes, so I just go in and fix that S and I'm ready to go, and I go ahead and heat emboss it. and I'll be trimming this down to be a strip. For me, a lot of images require grounding, so it's not like an image is just floating on air. And I think sentiments is the easiest thing to ground an image on. So this strip will be where the fox and bunny will be standing on. And I think it's perfect for this card because the background has so much going on. It's bright and bold and it's got a lot of glitter and color that it doesn't need anything else. I am popping it up on foam tape just because I felt like it. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I do have this foam tape that I want to use up, and I just decide I'm going to pop it up, and it adds a little bit of dimension along with the glitter, so it's kind of fun. So I'll adhere that to the black cardstock, and I realized honestly that I put the panel on the wrong side of the card. It folds funny. I put the fox down and it's just not the right fold. It would be folding your opening to your right instead of to your left, and I end up trimming that down into its own card panel and putting it on a white cardstock base because I just couldn't leave it as is. I always make this mistake. I don't know why. I never double check until after I glue everything down, but I'm sure that's happened to you too. So I use my T-ruler to line up that sentiment, and I'll add adhesive to the fox and the bunny. I really like this tape, which is from Crafter's Companion. It's pretty cheap. It comes in a large pack, and I think that the adhesive is really strong. So I will do that, and I will add a little glue to the areas of its ears and its legs because it is really hard to have things adhere to glimmer paste because of the texture. So that's why I really like using adhesive tape versus glue. Sometimes I just don't think that the glue will stick to that glitter because of the texture, and you know, so I like to do a mixture of both adhesive tape and liquid glue for adhering to like textured panels. So that's it for this card. I don't think you need to add anything else. It's so simple, and um, the background kind of speaks for itself. So for the second card, this is the one that I used the glimmer paste that was left over. So it didn't cover this entire panel like I wanted to. So I trimmed it down to the diagonal, and there's still an area where there's like kind of missing leafiness. And so I want to cover it up. So I would adhere that diagonal panel directly onto that yellow cardstock. And I'm going to use my LTA ink and swipe it on a piece of cardstock. This is in Goddess Green, super bright and vibrant, but I think that this is perfect to create a border between the glittery panel and the soft yellow cardstock. So I trim a strip of this LTA ink color, and I'm going to be stamping the sentiment right on it, and this will be diagonal just to create that border. And I think that works really well with the soft coloring of the fox and bunny. So I'm going to actually pop this up on foam tape because the panel is kind of uneven on the cardstock, and I kind of want to make it not so obvious, and I do so by putting the foam tape on it. So you don't notice that there is a bit of unevenness between the two pieces of paper. So I trim that off with my scissors, and I pop my fox and bunny up on a ton of foam squares. I don't know why I did this. I realized that after that I should have just used my foam tape instead of adding a million squares on the back of this, but I saved you the trouble of watching me do that, so I edited most of it out, and I'm just popping it right onto the panel. And I thought that the bottom was kind of plain compared to the glittery top panel, so I added a few embellishments. I think these are unicorn tears from Trinity Stamp. I wanted something to add to the card so it kind of coordinated with the other card, which had the black. So I used a piece of washi tape. It's from Doodlebug. It's called Tuxedo Stripes, and I use this on a lot of my cards because it adds that little nice accent to any card panel. And this actually makes these two cards kind of coordinate because it just has the same kind of elements, same kind of colors. For the interior of the card, I never decorate the interior, but this stamp set actually comes with a smaller reverse image of the larger fox and bunny. So I am just stamping it directly onto the card base using the Goddess Green Atelier ink. And I think that adds a very cute element just for someone when they open the inside of the card. So that's the same image, just in a smaller size right inside, and it's mirrored, and I think it's really cute. So that's it for today's cards. I hope you enjoy and check out the new products in the Ink on 3 store. I'll see you guys next time.